What is up, guys? It's the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and today I'm back to talk about Warhammer 40K. In this one, I will be going over the question, should the Necrons reclaim their flesh bodies? So the Necron race has been playable for quite a bit of time here, but it's one of the newer races in Warhammer 40K. When they first came out, they were mindless zombies in metal. And they had a rule where I think it was like if 50% of your army or like 75% of your army has perished, you lose the game. And that was a pretty devastating call for anybody playing Necrons because they were pretty powerful when they came out. But if you could alpha strike them, if you could just wipe out just enough of the models for the Necron player, they would automatically lose the game. Doesn't matter how many points they had, if you were playing kill points or anything like that, that doesn't matter because if you don't have that percentage of your army left, you lost the game. So Necrons have been a pretty interesting thing throughout their inception into Warhammer 40K. Their lore has been changing throughout the years, and in most recent times, we saw the Catan pretty much become Pokemon. Now the Catan are these ancient gods. They're basically these parasitic life forms that existed, chances are, at the dawn of creation, and they would go around the cosmos consuming the energy from stars. Eventually they consumed so much energy that they became these near omnipotent beings capable of destruction unlike anything we've seen in the galaxy. During the war in heaven, you had the two superpowers, the Necron tier, fighting against the Old Ones. Where the Old Ones were psychically powerful, the Necrons were technologically powerful. And they kept going back and forth. However, with the Necron tier, they had a pretty big downside to them, and that is that they were plagued with very short lives. They didn't live long, and if they did, they had a bunch of illnesses and diseases, space cancer if you will, so the Necron tier lifespan was not good. So this led the Silent King, Zarek, to begin finding out a way to combat this and to combat their enemies at the same time, and he came up to the Star gods, these Catan, these parasitic life forms, and he made a truce. He would ally with them as long as they gave them power and they gave them the ability to live longer. And then these Catan, they started creating these awesome furnaces, or I guess you could call them like transmorphing chambers, where the Necrons would go into and the Necrons would come out with this undying body. Now, before they did this, the Catan, since they were just basically formless beings, the Necrons gave them necrodermis bodies. So all the Catan we see nowadays is basically a shell in the shape of whatever the Catan wills it to be. That's why we see the Nightbringer have that, almost not demon, but like when you think of the concept of death, that's kind of what he embodies. The Void Dragon looks that way too, the Deceiver, the Burning One, etc. So all these Catans got these new physical forms that they could interact with the Necrons with, and they created these chambers that would allow the Necrons to go, or the Necron tier to come in and the Necrons to come out. However, they were tricked by the Deceiver, and that's what allowed them to basically lose their souls through this process. They got the Necrons definitely got the bad end of the stick here. However, they got exactly what they wanted. These Necron bodies are skeletal, they have necrodermis, even though if they break down, they could reassemble. So they got exactly what they wanted, but they lost their souls, they lost their personalities. And after the battle, the war in heaven, I guess you could say, the Necrons slumbered. They pushed the Old Ones out of the galaxy, and this made the galaxy a very not good place to be in. So the Necrons basically slept until life began to sprout once again in the galaxy. So they slept for millennia upon millennia, until finally we're in the 40K era of, this timeline, and Tomb Worlds are beginning to reawaken. Zarek, who left the galaxy to find a way to regain their flesh, regain their souls, regain their personality, essentially become Necron tier, once again, Zarek has finally arrived from the Halo stars, so he has been outside the galaxy and back, a feat that not many characters in 40k can accomplish, because once you go through the Halo stars, it's rumored that you'll never come back. So with this being said, do you think Zarek actually found a way to reclaim their flesh bodies? And if so, would you want that for the Necrons? Now, when I think Necrons, it's iconic. They are like these Terminator-esque machines. They have reanimation protocols. They have bodies that are just gonna come after you no matter what. Exactly like the Terminator. Like, you could shoot them, decapitate them, they're gonna reassemble and come back at you. It's a very iconic, very awesome look. Very different from much of the playable armies in 40k. Obviously, when you go to Age of Sigmar, you have like the Tomb Kings, the Ossiarch Bone Reapers, etc., which also have that skeletal look and feel to them. But the Necrons are much more than that. And I think the look, the feel of the Necrons is what makes the Necrons, and I don't think they will ever get their flesh bodies back. There was an instance in the lore with the Pariahs, who were humans turned Necrons, or Space Marines turned Necrons. I'm pretty sure that got retconned because you don't have Pariahs in the army anymore. It was a very interesting concept. You do have the Pariah Nexus, but that's a whole different thing. So right now, pretty much you have the Necrons trying to reawaken, the Silent King trying to unify all dynasties, and we also have the Void Dragon re-emerging itself, because for a long time we thought the Void Dragon was the Omnissiah. The Void Dragon was taken down by the Emperor and given to the Martians, the whole AdMech, as a treaty to ally with the humans of Earth and create an intergalactic empire. So that's what the Emperor did. He beat the Void Dragon, gave them this Void Dragon, and now he's imprisoned underneath the Martian sands, and we thought that the Void Dragon was the only dragon to be unsharded. Turns out that's not true. There are shards of the Void Dragon, as we can see, which makes sense if GW wants to sell that model. That's how different armies and dynasties can have their own Void Dragon. But I feel like I'm getting a little too out of topic here. So the Catan were at fault. Do you think the Catan would be a way to regain their bodies? Maybe utilize the Void Dragon to recreate these massive chambers to allow the Necron warriors, the Necron lords and stuff like that to regain their flesh bodies, but better, stronger, faster, and more adept to what they need to survive in the current timeline. As awesome as it sounds, I don't think that will be a case, because that would basically make the Necrons lose their identity. But I did ask you guys this question a few days ago, so let's see what the majority of you commenters want. Necrons in their metal skeletal bodies, or flesh and blood Necron tier? Caleb Barnhouse says, as a faction, they should stay in their metal forms, but a few flesh Necrons that aren't flayers would be a really cool thing to get, and that would make their lore better, because it could force the Necrons to search for the ability to heal that super cancer that they have, and the best way to do that would be the Tyranids. Allowing an interesting alien versus alien plot into 40k would be cool, but something they wouldn't ever do. Yeah, so it's very interesting that you brought the Tyranids into this, because the Tyranids are all about biomass, and they retain all the information of everything bio that they ingest. So there might be some type of body or flesh knowledge within the hive mind that the Necrons can use to reform their bodies. That would be a really cool idea, something really awesome. And we know that the Necrons and the Tyranids have fought time and time again, as when the Blood Angels allied with the Necrons to take on this Tyranid threat. So I could definitely see that. Mouse VP says, I've always thought that a good plot twist for them would be for them to discover a process to integrate the Eldar Soul Stones into their bodies, allowing them to regain what they lost in biotransference without having to become weak mortal meat sacks again. It would ignite a new war between the two races, the Eldar and the Necrons, again mimicking technology versus the warp, and a lot of interesting new plot developments would arise. So once again we see more Xenos, allying and to create more story. GW really needs to get the ball rolling on that, because almost every interesting plot point of 40k revolves around the Space Marines, be it Chaos or Loyalists. And yeah, we are seeing, the 40k universe through the eyes of the Imperium. It is nice to get more Xeno on Xeno plot points and action going on, because that means new stories, new intrigue, new people playing, and wanting to get the models for that. So I definitely could see that happening. Although I doubt they would ever integrate the Eldari Soul Stones into their bodies. That seems too much of a wild theory for it to work. Ultimate Blue says, it would be a very cool idea to expand on the knowledge introduced in The Infinite and the Divine. This novel has Orican the Diviner, who was gaining mad power levels and ascending into godhood for a mere moment. What if the Necron bodies were just a chrysalis for another form? Maybe they'd be Proto-Catan or the next old ones, but that would be mad OP. If not that, then they should just have an idea of Necron reproduction. So yeah, Necrons don't need to reproduce. Pretty much when a Necron warrior is incapable of reassembling itself, it gets teleported back to the tomb world, or it'll go into some type of stasis where the Necron spiders, the Canoptic spiders, will come in, pick up the bodies, and put them into the tomb so where they can be reassembled. So just because a Necron isn't alive, quote unquote alive, and because they have all protocols, think of them as robots. They get protocols and that's what they do. So if a Necron warrior isn't following its protocols, it will be teleported back to the tomb world to be reassembled into fighting order. So yeah, so there is no need for reproduction. The first part, going into this whole lore of the Infinite and the Divine, I haven't read that book yet, so it seems interesting seeing Orican get some godly powers, so I might have to delve into that next. And lastly, we have the Beast Within saying, I could never advocate for somebody abandoning the perfection of the machine. The Omnissiah blesses you. So that was all I have for today. Let me know your thoughts. It's just, the Necron tier looks so cool, but they're so weak, and I think the Necrons just are on a whole nother level of just lore, epicness. They look cool, so I think the Necrons are going to stay the Necrons, but let me know your thoughts down below in this video, and we'll keep the conversation going. Thanks again for listening, thanks again for watching. As always, if you guys want to help support us a little bit more, links to the Patreon page are down below, or you can support us here on YouTube via Super Thanks. And as always, it's the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, signing out. Peace.